Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the University Library's first virtual context exhibit and reception. My name is Dr. Tony Olivas, Engagement and Inclusion Librarian, and it is my pleasure to moderate. Hello, my speech just left the screen. That's great. Well, it is my pleasure to moderate this event. I'd like to thank my dean, Dr. Jennifer Fabi, my colleagues, April Siqueiros and Holly Hampton, and all of the support and hard work from Amanda Daglish, Jamie Higgins, and Arlene Martin for help in making this exhibit happen, because none of this would be possible without you. Tonight will be fairly similar to what we've done at in-person panel discussions. So basically, we'll allow the panel to discuss the questions posed to them for about 40 minutes or so, and then the panel will answer questions from the audience during the last 15 minutes of the program. So please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A form at any time during this presentation. All right, on with the show. I am so proud to introduce to you one of my favorite former CSUSM students. This is not the first time Jake Northington has been a panelist for one of these University Library context exhibit discussions. In 2019, he and several other students from all over campus, including Project Rebound and Transitions Collective, were responsible for the incredibly popular library exhibit called Cultures Confined. Jake showcased some of his photography there, and I found his work to be breathtaking and beautiful. He also is a published author / artist, and his photography books are located here in our University Library Special Collections. So, as I said before, I'm extremely proud of Jake, and I'm so pleased that his work is our first virtual exhibit. So now, instead of me introducing our other fine panelists, I would like for them to briefly introduce themselves and give a very short description of how you've worked with Jake in the past. And we're gonna go in alphabetical order by first name. So we have Ariel, then John, then Lucy, then Marilyn, Nancy, and Sean. Thank you. Ariel?
Yes, I'm sorry, I couldn't see myself, so I wasn't sure if I was supposed to go. So good evening, everyone. My name is Ariel Stevenson. I work in the Office of Inclusive Excellence. I've worked with Jake Northington over quite a few years with his time at Cal State San Marcos. I met him as a student. We've shared panels together, panels on Black hair, Black culture, why Black expression is important. He's working in the office on photography for our office, folks who work in our office, to actual art for some of our All People's Luncheon materials. And so he definitely has been a great student and I'll say partner with elevating the art for my office and marketing for my office. That's not all that he's done, but that's what I'll say for now. We have someone else on our panel from my office who can probably say more.
John?
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Rawlins III, and my pronouns are he, him, his. I am the director of the Black Student Center, also working in the Office of Inclusive Excellence this year. But specifically in my role as the director of the Black Student Center, I met Jake when I was first interviewing. I remember him being present in my interview day, and then being one of the first students that I connected with when I got here to campus in July of 2019. Jake has a lot of knowledge on the history of the creation of the Black Student Center because he was very involved from the very beginning, and even before the center opened, the work that went into getting the center here, and has always been a supporter of the students within the space. Jake has done a number of projects, as you'll see the photos that he has. We actually have one of his photos up in our space, which is always a welcome sight to see for many. Jake has also helped to do a lot of the really the graphic design around the center. The logo that you see that we use currently is something that Jake designed for us. And one of the big things that Jake did for us this year, which I really think is a game changer, Jake created videos around our Black Excellence Month events. One video highlighting all the events that happened during the month of February of 2020, and then the one other specific video around CSUSM's first ever National Pan-Hellenic Council Step Show. Both of those videos, I mean, really showcase so much of the beauty and the culture of our Black student body at Cal State San Marcos, and Jake's just been an incredible person to work with. Also, Jake has helped me with some things in my role as president of the Cornell University Black Alumni Association, and I continue to work with Jake and really, continue to grow that relationship. And I'm very, very proud to be here and very proud of all the work that he's done, and can't wait to talk more about it.
Thank you. And I just realized I forgot to tell the audience that we do have closed captioning available. So if you would like closed captioning, it's down at the bottom of the screen. Thank you, Jennifer, for being our closed captioner. Okay, Lucy.
Hi, I am an associate professor in art, media, and design, and I was introduced through many classes to Jake through his passionate expression of systemic inequities through art. And what was remarkable to me through our collaboration as his work evolved, I had the opportunity to work with Jake through a number of independent studies that through our collaboration, we combined research into demographics of systemic inequities and racism apparent in the demographics of cities, and found new ways to show that through all sorts of combinations of art and science. And his work in all of these different areas have a lot of threads in common. I think we'll find many of those woven together tonight.
Thank you. Marilyn?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marilyn Mcwilliams. I am the administrative assistant in the Office of Inclusive Excellence. And I, as well as Ariel, have known Jake for several years. He would come venture into our office. One thing about Jake that I was very, very much appreciative for our Black student recognition at the end of the year, I normally would take pictures of all of our graduates. So that was a very time-consuming thing. And one thing that I would always tell the students, I am not a professional photographer, so please excuse how these photos come out. Well, a couple of years ago, we hired Jake, and I was so elated that I didn't have to give that speech. And Jake was a professional photographer that took magnificent photos of all of our graduates. So that's one memory that I will always have of him. We couldn't utilize him this year because we had no recognition ceremony, but as you will hear throughout the program, Jake, throughout our event, Jake is he's a top student on my list. Thank you.
Nancy?
Hi, I'm one of the lecturers, professors at Cal State San Marcos in the AMD department, Art, Media, and Design. I had the privilege of having Jake as one of my students in my intro to photography class, where I got to meet Jake, and we clicked pretty early on because of our background with the military. He was an excellent student that we decided to move forward because of his project with wanting to explore other options of Black identity. And he did his first book was based on women's black hair. And so we decided to team up, and he did an independent study with me, and the project started to evolve from there, and he really honed his skill through digital photography and moving forward. So I'm really excited to be here with him today and see how much he's grown. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about the work. Thanks.
And Sean.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Visentainer. I'm the head of special collections at the University Library. And I met Jake, we were introduced a little over a year ago by our Arts and Humanities librarian here. So I met him through an exhibition that the art department was putting on. Found out that he had some books, and so we were able to purchase them for special collections. And very happily, they reside in our archives now. And then from there, we had a conversation in general about art, and Jake and I collaborated on an oral history. We talked a lot about his art and his philosophy of art and photography, as well as a lot of other related subjects. And during that oral history, Jake talked about the student-led advocacy for the creation of the Black Student Center. It was a really interesting part of the history. The whole history is interesting, and we hope to have it up online in the near future. But it was apparent from that conversation then and subsequent kinds of conversations with Jake that the history of the Black Student Center needed to be further explored and collected. So we started the Black Student Center Oral History Project with John and Renzo Lara and our archivist Jennifer Ho. And I'm really happy to say that even though Jake is no longer at CSUSM, the library's relationship with him continues both through this context exhibition and with the involvement on this oral history project. And so it's been a real pleasure to know Jake and be able to continue working with him.
Thank you all. Now let's hear from the man of the hour, Jake. Jake, we're here talking about, you have all of your Cal State San Marcos fans here. So can you please speak to your own your own personal experience as a Black student in CSUSM's art program?
Well, I'd like to say thank you to the art program, first of all. I mean, there's a lot of good professors who allow for all of the different students to really explore what they want to do. And it's not, they don't tie you down. So my experience was off top says, I didn't see myself when I walked into the classroom. I was the only one. And then after maybe a year or two, I saw one or two other people, and that's pretty much what it was for my entire time in the art program. It may be one or two Black people in the whole program. And, and we were in different sections. Some people emphasize dance, some people emphasize film or photography. So it was a little different, but art, just like much of higher education, is pretty much based off of the traditional European standard. So many of the discussions around art were shaped around the European artists. And as we get closer to contemporary time, it changes a bit, but that's pretty much was the scope of it. So it's up to the teacher and the professor to maybe choose to include anything outside of what's been in tradition. And some of the teachers did a good job at that. That's, as you heard from Nancy and Lucy, they really did a job of bringing in what's maybe considered counter to the narrative, or telling a new story as a counter storytelling, as they would say in critical race theory. So, Nancy spoke about in one class, actually for photographing different tones of skin, and how that's not something that people would really look at or really pay attention to. So for her to bring that up and to discuss it and talk about different techniques around it, that allows for other students who may not consider themselves to be white to be included in photography and film, to feel like they can really work in these departments. So my experience in the art program was with a lot of help. Judith Hertzko, there's been a list of teachers and faculty along the way in the art program at Cal State San Marcos that really are helpful to all students, and they helped me. So anything that I was trying to do or wanted to do, they were always there for assistance. So those particular teachers didn't do anything to hold students back, and they didn't hold me back. They just served to help. So that was my experience.
And you kind of touched on this a very little bit, but I'd like for you to delve a little bit deeper. And I'm going to ask Nancy and Lucy to jump in, and anybody else, of course, on the panel to jump in. But the art of photography is so much more than pointing and clicking. Can you speak to the technical aspects of photographing different models, specifically taking skin color into consideration?
It's a loaded question. Just a little bit about my background. I'm a military photographer as well. So I'm a combat photographer, and one of the things that I really had to learn on missions and stuff like that is that you never know who your client's going to be or who you're going to be photographing, especially when you're going overseas to these other countries. So having that experience and knowing how challenging it was, I really wanted to bring that into my intro class. So when I started teaching a few years ago, actually as when I was a student at San Marcos, we did not learn that in the intro class. I had a really great professor, but she didn't teach a lot of the studio lighting, how to get a reading on different skin tones and stuff like that. So that was really important to me that I brought that into the classroom. We watch a lot of documentaries, a lot of films. We touch base with a lot of different artists. I like to have a broad understanding of that. I know that it can be challenging, and for those students that want to become professional photographers, it is so important that they learn how to photograph different skin tones, because if they don't and they're in a position working for a company or a client or their own portfolio, it does get looked down upon, and it can be very challenging for the student or anybody. So that was really important to me. We utilize the library a lot for those types of studios with the like Jake was saying, with the green screen. I teach different techniques with how to use flashes, how to use different types of the lighting sources that we have available on campus, and then also just learning the different types of grayscales and how to meter skin. So that's really important to me, that the students learn that diversity background. With the Intro to Photography class, we get an array of students ranging from international students to our Chinese program to, like Jake said, the limited amount of Black students. So I always try to bring in as much as possible and, make sure that the students are learning that, because to me, it'd be a disservice if I didn't teach that and they left my class not knowing how to meter and understand different skin tones when it comes to the technical aspect of things. So I hope I answered your question. Maybe Lucy can kind of tone in on that as well.
Yeah, I think that lesson is really effectively taught, because it's apparent in these photos, the individual beauty, and they're just really spectacular images. I think from my perspective, in terms of what I really focus on in digital media and looking at vast quantities of information and choosing select images, it's a question of storytelling and how we might, within one data set, say a very personal story. And I also see this body of work, these photos, as a personal narrative within a data set of demographics of CSUSM. It's both a gift to the institution to have these portraits, and it's a personal reflection of, I think, Jake, your own building of a community. In the photography world, in that process of art making, we have to engage with others in a way that builds communities. And I don't think I've ever seen you, Jake, on campus without others, without someone you're mentoring or you're lifting up. And I think that's a really vital part of your practice. That's, to me, what these photographs also say, lifting us up as our people's visions, and specifically the Black students on campus.
Tony, I'd like to say something about
Please.
The technical aspect. Well, this also put me in a place to get over or get through some things that I'm not necessarily so comfortable with. So my temperament is not very personable, some would say. So a technical part of this is I had to kind of be more of a people person in order to even get comfortable or to make the model comfortable and to talk and to discuss what I'm trying to accomplish and get across, this is what I'm looking for. And you have to work back and forth with a person, because it's not as simply as stand here, pose, and click, since you kind of asked that question. So it takes a little back and forth and providing an arena of comfortability and trying to get that person to understand it's bigger than just taking a picture. So it may, some of these shots took 75 takes. Some of it is a person walking towards me or walking away from me. It's not just you sit and pose. And then I'm picking particular times of day because I don't like to use flash at all. I prefer natural light. So I want to show the natural beauty with a natural light. So I had to pick particular times of day, early in the morning or right in that afternoon. People call it the golden hour. So there's just some parts to the technicality that you were asking for.
Would anybody else like to answer that question? Okay. So this question is for the whole panel. I'd like to know, well, not I, we would like to know, what did the images in Chasing Andromeda evoke for you? And hopefully everyone is able to see the exhibit that is currently on your screen. So what did this exhibit evoke for you? What did these images say to you?
Tony, I can say something.
Thank you, Ariel.
To start. So there is a lot going on in the world when it comes to the Black body always. To the world, and sometimes mostly to the media, the Black body is seen as a weapon. We've seen that with a knee to the neck for almost over 8 minutes. The images, for whatever reason, for folks attached to stereotypes. And so when I see the Andromeda photos, they really show and help me experience and know and remember why Black joy is important. That the Black smile in itself is an act of resistance, especially in the current world that we are in. That Black folks are treated inhumanely. And when I see photos like this, we still rise and smile and move and go to college, and our professors and our teaching. So I'm very pleased and moved all at once, and so over excited to know that even when things are very difficult, especially for, Black men, Jake is a Black male living in America, that the way in which he makes sure that he makes a mark is to leave joy and magic and to provide the counter of what some folks think the Black body resembles. He makes sure that in the face of that, with these photos for me, that we are not those things. We are these things, very people and spirits in our humanity and in our skin, lovely. That's what the photos do for me.
Thank you. Marilyn, would you like to share?
When I first saw Jake's book, I was just truly amazed. And I saw photos of students that I hadn't even seen on campus before. So it sparked something in me that we have all this going on, and I didn't even, I'm in my office, I'm in my little silo, I'm in Craven Hall on the 6th floor where hardly no one ventures. as opposed to when I used to work for ASI, I used to be around students all the time. So I would see students all the time. But being in that, you know, in Craven Hall up on the top floor, I didn't get a chance to see students a lot. And so when students would come to the office, I would welcome it. You know, Jake was always in my office. Yes, Jake, you was always in my office. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And when he showed me that, I was just so amazed of all the beauty. I echo everything that Ariel had mentioned about, you know, everything that's happening in the world. But when I look at the capturing of all of the beauty that was captured in each of those photos, and then, you know, it made me wanted to get out of that sixth floor and kind of like walk around campus to find out where my students were and go venture in the Black Student Center a little bit more and sit down and be able to chat with them, because I felt so out of touch. But I saw the beauty in how he captured, and just even being around him and seeing him when he's actually taking these photos, and the command that he has, like he mentioned, you know, some photos they're walking away from you, some photos they're walking forward, or look this way or look that way, or don't smile. Give me the raw you, you know, things like that. Just, you know, it touched me. So just looking at all this beauty, it just really touched me.
Thank you. John, Sean, anybody else?
So,
Yes.
Okay.
Go.
You can go ahead.
No, I was just going to say briefly, I think for me, I guess it kind of goes back to what Ms. Marilyn just said. I think this is a piece of, well, I say for me, this is where I find myself so fortunate, because I get to interact with these students on a regular basis, right? And I think what I see from the students in the center and in the space, in a space that is, you know, has been created by them and their peers, for them and their peers, right? As a place where they can come together in community, where they can learn together, share their experiences together, get to see this joy, this beauty, this royalty in the space. And I think when I see these images, my hope is that folks are getting, at the very least, a little bit of a glimpse into that, right? Into who these individuals are, and kind of how they should be seen, right? We understand that our students, not just on this campus, but at campuses across the country, our Black students have been hurting. Our Black students have been challenged in many ways. And I say our Black students like I was never a Black student. We have been challenged, right? We have been questioned about our identity and who we are, and been tested. And sometimes we talk about, you know, resiliency of Black people a lot, right? How resilient we are, how resilient we can be. And resilience is a great thing, but a lot of that also comes with a lot of pain, right? It comes with a lot of strife. It comes with a lot of tension that we have to endure. And I think these photos show kind of, you know, what we are able to do past that, right? You see the joy, you see the smiles, you see the radiance of the students in these pictures. And I just think for, you know, I don't know all the students, because some of these students predate, you know, my time on campus. But of those that I do know, it's one of those things where I see, no matter what I've experienced in the classroom, there's strength there, right? And no matter what I experience when I leave campus in terms of, you know, going to, you know, my communities where I'm from, you know, going back to what Ariel said earlier, what else is happening in the world and in society that impacts me and individuals that look like me, there's strength, there's power, and these pictures show that. And my hope, again, is that for those who don't have the fortunate opportunity that I do to interact with these students every day, they get to see some of that through this photography and through this art.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I completely agree with a lot with you're saying, and as as someone who's seen Jake's work from the beginning and how it's evolved the last 3 books, like seeing the first book that was the biggest emphasis on, creating a idea where, Black women's hair was a very hot topic. And, when he came to me and was like, I really want to photograph this. And I was like, all about it. And I worried a little bit because I didn't know if he was going to find enough subjects on campus. Because I know that is always a challenge. But for this series, for me, it was like he was reclaiming the Black body in a different sense. He created this narrative by allowing people to have self-expression. Taking the time, like he said, to get to know your subject is one of the biggest important lessons that I do teach in my class, how to connect with your subject, leaning on them, talking to them, getting to know. One of the lessons that we teach is an environmental portrait, and you have to do it with another classmate, and you don't know the other classmates. And so you're kind of picked randomly, and you're put together. And I give them a week, and they have to really understand what the other classmate is and what their story is in order to provide that idea of what you're trying to represent. And Jake really owned it. And coming along with this work, he really understood the aesthetic, pleasing eye of the way he wanted to portray his subjects. And it completely has evolved into this new, beautiful idea, especially with everything going on in the world. I think of past photographers like Gordon Parks, who are documentary photographers photographing on the street, and that Jake was able to, again, to come back to this and reclaim the Black body to really provide us with the narrative of what the students are going through on campus. And I praise the work, and I'm so proud that he's come this far with the work, and I'm excited to where he's going to go next.
So we'll go with Lucy, then Sean.
Thank you. I think it's difficult not to sing praises, and I think I want to bring up another aspect of this work, which is the narrative quality that's implied through the title. And there is, within all of your titles, Jake, a consistent poetry that my dog is attesting to now with her barks. She loves them too. But this title, Chasing Andromeda, to me, it evokes so many different meanings. And you reinforce that with your text, and also perhaps having a lot of your subjects on the move, so that you're not only chasing that beauty, but they are chasing something, these individuals. And I think that I'd love to hear more about what that title means for you. I know the history of that is Andromeda is a star that you can just barely see with your bare eyes, and then it becomes clear through binoculars. So there's certainly some poetic carryovers in that. And your titles, they're works of art on their own.
Sean?
So I'm not an artist and I'm not an art critic. How eloquently I'll be able to speak compared to the other panelists. But when I see Jake's photography, I feel a sense of pride. There's pride in the models themselves. There's a assurance and comfort that I think that I personally don't often feel I project. And so it's really nice to feel pride for people that are obviously empowered and showing it. And I feel pride for Jake as well, with the ability to pull all of this together with these pretty fantastic visual compositions, excuse me.
Thank you. Jake, a lot of folks talked a little bit about your photography and the book, or books, excuse me. So could you please talk a little bit about how this specific exhibit ties in with your photography books that are currently in our special collections, and how people can buy these books, buy their own copies?
Okay. Yeah, well, I want to explain the title a little bit from what Lucy brought up. The idea of the title of each book stood alone. So the title of the first book is Human, and it's spelled Hueman, to denote the tonalities of Black people and the range that they could be, and to also, when you see us, to see us as human and not as something other than. We're human, so see us that way. The title of the other book was called Solar Amalgamations. So amalgamate, put together a bunch of things, put together, so we could be a lot of different things. We're not a monolith. So that's what that was about. And the solar is reference to the sun. So we are sometimes called the people of the sun with the amalgamations. That's why that book is titled that. And the third book is titled We Are. And I wanted to show through pictures, again, that we are many things. We're also students walking around these campuses, and we should be treated as such, given the same rights and privileges. And we should be able to enjoy our lives and enjoy our time as students, such like everyone else. So, it's a bit of a resistance to, in a counter narrative, again, to what's been going on traditionally. So, and then I thought out each title going together, connecting, and becoming one sentence. So putting the books together, the entire sentence says, we are human solar amalgamations. And that comes out to mean we are stars. That's what that means. So the sentence of the title of each book completes that sentence. And the title of this piece, Chasing Andromeda, that's actually the title of the first book that I turned in for Nancy's class. And what that means is Andromeda was a constellation in our galaxy, in our solar system, in the Milky Way. And it's one of the largest constellations of stars, and it's built in a cluster or a double helix, like DNA or like our hair. So, and historically in mythology, the constellation Andromeda was supposed to represent a great queen in Africa and Ethiopia, and it was supposed to stand the test of time and to remember her greatness and her beauty. So the idea of chasing Andromeda is to always look for the beauty within Black people, within Black bodies, and no matter what form they come in. So that's what the title means, and that's how all three of the books connect.
Thank you. Jake, this next question is for you and John and Sean. Yeah. Could you all talk a little bit about the Black Student Center Oral History Project?
John? I'll let John handle that one.
You want me to start? Okay. Well, I think, first of all, again, Jake, in working with him, of course, like I said, Jake was great to me, as many folks have been, about kind of filling in the blanks, right? I got here in July of 2019. The center opened in February of 2017. And Jake has, over time, shared with me some of the joys and the struggles that students face that, has been told to him about staff and faculty and what people went through to see the establishment of the center and even to get it to where we are today. And so I think it's important, one, that we understand that history. We're at a point in time, especially, Jake, I hope that I'm not taking any part of your answer, but I know this is part of the conversation we've had. So if you look at how, especially on college campuses, things have evolved around the Black experience, a lot of the responses to movements, social movements, has then created certain things on campuses. For instance, I talk about somewhat regularly my own experience as a student at Cornell University for undergrad, how in the history of Cornell as it pertains to Black students, you had these major movements in the 60s that led to the takeover of the Willard Straight Student Union in 1969, which then came to establish the Africana Studies and Research Center, the Ujima Residential College on campus, and many other things that then over 30 years later, I would come on campus and be a part of. Right, and that really truly made my experience as a Black student at this predominantly white institution in upstate New York. And so that was, again, that happened in my Cornell experience. Then you fast forward to, I would say, 2014, 2015, you start to see this rise of the Black Lives Matter movement around the murders of Trayvon Martin, around the murders of Freddie Gray, and many other individuals. And then what happens in 2017? There's an establishment of the Black Student Center. It opens its doors. Now, clearly not to say that there wasn't work being done before that. However, if you look at kind of where the country is, and look at what students on college campuses across the country, but specifically San Marcos, were feeling, this was one of the ways in which the students, faculty, staff, administrators, community, everyone responded. The push for the ultimate establishment of this center. So I think it's important to be able to speak to that, because what I want to make sure of in my role now is that, 10, 15, 20 years, even 50 years down the line, it's not just seen as, well, it was a place and a space that was created because other spaces were created, right? Or it was just a space that we thought was cool to have on campus, so we have it. Because then at that point, I also feel like, I feel like it's easy, whoever's here in the next 50 years, because it probably won't be me, there are individuals who will be able to uphold what the center means, right? Uphold the mission of the center and not see it as, well, maybe we don't need a center like this, right? And so that oral history and being able to record that and to have it is so important. And I also think, just in addition to that, within our community, within the Black community, oral history is extremely important. That written history, unfortunately, has not been there for several reasons, and we don't have any time for any of us to lecture on why that is. But the importance of oral history in the Black community is what passes things on from generation to generation and creates this sense of belonging, this greater sense of community. So when I think about, again, my experience as a student at Cornell and what was established before, and hearing all the stories, it made me then kind of operate a little bit differently as a student and student leader on campus, and even does that as an alum. And I think the same will happen as we continue to craft this project to really tell the story of our Black Student Center.
Sean, Jake?
Sean? I think Sean is the first person that I gave this this talk to, or this idea to. So I'll let him answer first.
Sure. So I can talk a little bit about where we're at with the project, and I think where we're headed. And so, as Jake mentioned, this is an idea that came out of the oral history and coming back to conversations, and Jake posing this this question about the need to document this history, which is really important on a lot of levels for our community to understand the student advocacy that went into the creation of the center, as well as the movements with the staff and faculty that were involved, and that it was it was a long process, as I understand it. And I think that that Jake and John can perhaps speak a little bit better to that. But it was a process of many starts and stops. And so we were planning to interview students, staff, faculty that were involved in various phases of the advocacy, creation, and implementation of the center through these oral histories. And then the library will work on preserving these, making these histories accessible to researchers in the future. We're also planning on creating a collection around the Black experience at CSUSM, where we look into our archival collections, which are generally, I'll try not to get too in the weeds here, but they're generally put together by provenance, by donor, or what department they come from. So there can be specific stories or narratives or experiences that sometimes get hidden a little bit. So we really need to delve into our collections. We're going to tie all of these, the student experience, the Black student experience together to create a collection that highlights that. And then what final shape it'll end up taking, I think, is still under discussion and planning, but we would like to have some sort of digital presentation as well of the histories, as well as the research collection that is formulated around it. I also wanted to mention that, you know, we're hoping to get a good amount of student participation and really have students drive the interview process. I think that's really important to have students interviewing other students and give that context. So as we move forward with the project, if there's any students out there that are interested to be a part of it, please reach out to John and Jake and I, and we'll figure out a way to get you involved.
I'd like to add to that. Again, a lot of this is about counter storytelling and changing the narrative, which is a resistance to some of the oppression that we've faced. So my idea for retelling the story or the history of the Black Student Center was to make sure we include everybody who was a part of it. So we are really digging into different people and different faculty, staff, and students and community members who may have any type of input or what was going on at the time, you know, 5, 10 years ago, or some of the other resistance situations that happened, you know, 20 years ago on the campus. We don't want to forget anybody. So a part of us moving forward is to not forget the history. We don't want people coming into this center and thinking that this just started, or it all started in 2017 and that's when everybody took a step forward into progress. There's a long history of people, and you know, we don't want to forget anybody, and we don't want to forget the true story, because anybody can go out and say, this is how it happened, this is what happened, and everybody goes unlisted or unsung heroes or the hidden figures. Well, we want to include everybody that was a part of the process. There was a lot of allyship going on, and there was people all over that were really assisting with us getting a Black Student Center. So we want to tell the story now and not wait until we're 50 years into the future and trying to figure out what happened. So just like these photographs or kind of a historic document, and it places us like, hey, this happened. These Black students were on this campus. They were students. They did well. This was a great place for them. We need to tell all of the stories, because the resistance to oppression can come in many forms. So we want to show all of these things. We want to showcase everybody that was involved. This is not just about me and what I do. As you see the people in the photographs, they are part of this too. They could have all told me no. So the pictures of the people you don't see, they told me no. So, you know, that's kind of how that works. So this is about us working together to produce something great for everybody to enjoy, because the Black Student Center is for everybody. It's not just for Black students. It's open to everybody. It functions to serve for the entire campus. So much like this artwork, it's for everybody to view, because I need people who may have negative feelings towards Black people to see them as human, to see all of the beauty in a full range and array, and to take away from the idea of super predator and words like that go around, and thug. We need to get rid of those things. And this is also for the self-healing and empowerment for the Black people themselves. So when they see themselves published like this, placed on big posters, you walk into the Black Student Center, you see that huge poster of Janice Young. I think she graduated in like 2017. So that's my favorite picture of all. So all of this adds to the progressive change that I wanted to see as a student, and that's why I'm involved, and that's the biggest reason for the oral history project of the Black Student Center.
Thank you. I want to make sure that we get some questions in. So Holly, if you'd like to take over for audience questions.
Yeah, sure. So we've got a couple of questions that came in, and Jake did answer some of these. He typed the answer in for a few of these, but I'll still ask them aloud, just in case Jake would like to give more detail to his answer. So one of the first answers that came in was if you could, which you did answer live, which was if you could talk about your title, the title of your collections. So that one you did answer live. And then we have a question from your fellow C13 grad school classmates, which says, for audience that are not from the art world, what is the message or feeling you'd like the audience to walk away from when viewing this body of work?
Again, I want everybody to view us as humans. Don't change the way you act. You know, if you're nice to Tony, you're nice to Sean, you're nice to Nancy, if you're an upbeat person, that shouldn't alter now when a Black student approaches you, when a Black staff member, Black faculty approaches you. You know, that that feeling of humanity, humanity, humanity shouldn't alter now because you're talking to somebody of a darker tone from a different culture. That shouldn't change. You know, let's treat each other properly. So I want people to look at this and really see what maybe they missed. Or you watch a lot of media, TV and everything, and they shape Black people a certain way. Well, I want you to be able to look at these things and see that there's more to the story than what's promoted or propagated. And we can all help change this narrative from our own jobs, careers. Somebody next to me in class can help change this narrative. So, shout out to the C13 cohort at an MACG program in Fullerton for the good question. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Okay, so we have another question.
I have a question for Jake.
Oh, yeah.
For kind of, because you're on the subject right now. Recently, I had a student who was in my class who's in a different class right now, and he's working on his final project. One of the questions that he asked me was, what do I do if I want to photograph the Black community and I'm not Black? Is it going to be frowned upon if I take on that particular subject? And how do I photograph the Black community, being that he is of Hispanic descent, because he's so apprehensive?
Oh, I think you said it earlier. That's a loaded question. So now the answer I give is my answer. It's not the answer for everybody in the community. So let's make sure we take that into account. So now, I would flip the question. So if he was from the Asian community or Latino community or Jewish community, I would ask him the same question. What possible issues or may arise if I want to go out and take pictures and do a particular piece or work of this entire community that I don't belong to? So I would pose that question. And then I would see if that student could probably, at that point now, maybe see potential problems or ways to navigate around those problems so that they're not problems. Because you don't want to run into a position where it looks like you are outside of this group and you're now telling the story of that group. And then maybe some of them may have resistance to it, some may not, and some may not even care. Well, if you don't want to run into that problem, so I would say reach out to members of the community, work with them, ask a lot of different members of this community different questions to help with your work and your product, to make sure you're not making mistakes and representing them in ways that have been stereotypical. And you may look over those things if you're not from that group. So I would just tell them to work within that group and go around the campus and get a bunch of responses, and don't use one member or 10 members to give you your answer. Because even my answer now may not suffice, but that would be my response to the question.
Okay, so thank you for that. So we have another question, and that question is from Dawn. And that question is, what's next, Jake? What are you pursuing artistically?
Dawn, that's Dr. Person. That's who I work for in Cal State Fullerton at C-Real. So that was a good question. What I'm pursuing is, as you maybe have been able to see, there's a few people wearing different shirts that I design. Some of these, I use some of my photography to design. Some of them are just, different graphics that I design. And it's all to promote positivity into the Black community. Everybody sees what's going on in this country now, during the Rodney King riots, during the Civil Rights Movement. There's always some type of rise of resistance to fight back oppression. And within that, I'd like to offer some type of positivity, positive images, positive words, just something other than everything we have to go through. So we have to go through some of these, trials, but there should be some offer to the mental comfortability. Some people are going through a lot of stress around what's happening today. And then you add pandemics, you add not being around people so much, you add everything now is digital and online. So these are a lot of stressors that could add to a person's mental. So I'd like to offer, here's a way to express yourself in a positive manner, to feel good about yourself, to feel good about this group of people who've been disenfranchised for so long and oppressed for so long. So that's the point of my clothing. So I put it in the chat. A few people have typed it in the chat, theblackness.org, and you can go find a lot of these shirts and more shirts like it. I see Miss Ariel, Miss Marilyn, John, a lot of people have on some of the merchandise. And so what's next for me is to produce more merchandise. I'm going to start a new series of books. So I completed that 3-part series. I'm going to start a new series, and I'm just going to continue with that. And I'll graduate from this Fullerton program in 2022. That's what's next. So.
Thank you. And that does answer the other question that came in regarding your shirt.
Yeah.
And then there's another question that came in from Jamie. So it says, did you give your subjects the choice of where and how they were photographed? For example, to smile or not smile?
Yes, that was a part of this as well. So each book has a different emphasis, and each book was attacking a different social issue that I wanted to attempt to make a correction to through photography. So for instance, the book for Black women and Black women's hair, I wanted to focus on them loving and expressing joy in about their hair and about just being them. So I asked all of them to smile, maybe jump, dance, flare, different things like that. The book that was focusing on Black men was more about them being seen as human and who they are. And because America has a history of vaudeville, ragtime, and the tap dancing, and you have to shuck and jive, for anybody that knows that phrase, in order to be accepted. So I told all of the men to just give a calm look or give a straight look, or a few I would ask to smile. So I wanted to give a balance in the men's book of here is me in pure joy of myself, or here is me straightforward. This is how I am. I shouldn't have to smile. So smiling would be my choice. Acting a certain way, or, just to make you comfortable, that's my choice. That's not something I should have to do. So, and then the third book, the We Are, is more about us enjoying time together. We see a lot of fights on these different YouTube videos, and we see a lot of just negativity surrounding communities of Black people. So as a community, I wanted people to see us together, enjoying each other, having fun, having lunch on campus, walking about campus, just loving the college life and experience as a Black person.
So I'm gonna step in here for just a moment, and actually we're coming to a close, sorry about that, but
oh, yeah.
I want to thank you, Jake, thank the rest of the panelists, thank you so much for doing this. And on behalf of the University Library, I want to thank all of you for attending our first virtual exhibit reception. And before you log off, I have a couple of promotional things that Jake is going to help me with here.
Yeah.
Like he said, Jake started his own t-shirt business after graduation, and he designs everything. And he pointed out a bunch of folks that were already wearing the t-shirts. So please order from his website. I put that information in the chat, and it's theblackness.org. There is an art opportunity called Art Distribution, and that's October 17th. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Jake?
Yes, that's through Art Equals Opportunity. So anyone familiar with that on the CSUSM campus, you should go log into their site, Art Equals Opportunity, and it gives a whole explanation of what that exactly is about. And then you have the Juncture art exhibit that's coming up. This is done annually by students from the art program at San Marcos, and they produce their own art exhibit. And they're always looking for new artists to submit works, so that's open. And then I want to give a few thank yous before we close. And also, Shamar Ruff, Dara Williams, and Isaiah Cooper. These are 3 Black art students on campus now, and their work needs to be, recognized, and people need to check them out as well. And I'd like to thank Kenzo and Michelle for being on the cover of this latest book. I'd like to thank Lauren Cobbs. It's a professional events company that I've worked for 4 years. And I'd like to thank LaPortia Ellick and Dr. Cole Levant and everybody that's here today wearing merchandise, not wearing merchandise, just for showing up to come see everything that everybody had to bring. Thank you all.
And remember to follow Jake on Instagram at @the_blackness.
Yeah.
And I just want to ask, we have a few questions, and I really want these questions to be answered, but if the panel, if you're tired, I completely understand. But for those of you who can stay on for like 5 more minutes, I just wanted to say, of course, follow the University Library on Instagram and Facebook, and I put that on the chat as well, and we're also on Twitter. To keep up with the latest news and events and services. So whomever would like to stay, please stay.
I'm staying. I'm still here. So.
Okay. Holly, what other questions do we have?
Hello, so we do have another question, and I believe it is from Horace. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Have you ever received pushback for the work that you do?
Oh man. Okay. We don't want to. I don't want to talk bad upon anybody, but yes, I have received pushback. So again, that's America, the anti-Blackness that is so weaved into America. Yes, I've received pushback. Many people would ask, why do we need this? Some of those same people on campus ask, why do we need a Black Student Center? You know, so that still exists, the pushback, the resistance to having something that's just Black. Many times people want to make something that if Black people want to produce this one thing for Black people, there's this big push to make it for everybody. And it's like, well, why can't we do this? Why can't we do this for these? Why can't we include all these other groups? And so since that's always been a part of America, well, I did receive pushback. Why do you want to focus on this? Because this thing is a specific social issue that I want to address and somehow give some type of a view into what it could be. Let's try to make a correction or make a change. So since this is something particular, like hair, like skin tone being darker, then I want to use this as an opportunity to try to help make some type of corrections or help people view us all as human. So I did receive resistance in ways such as that.
Thank you. And then there are lots of great comments, kind words coming in through the Q&A for you. And then there was also a question about if you could say the website again. So I don't know if you can see the chat, Brittany, but the website is www.theblackness.org. Okay, and that's all the questions we have in the Q&A.
Okay, I'll say one more thing. So it's called The Blackness because this is to encompass all areas, levels, variants of Blackness. There's not one, there's an unlimited amount. So that's the purpose of the name being called The Blackness. It's the known, the unknown, the seen, the unseen, just like chasing Andromeda. It means apparently, you know, I want to push all that together and I want all of my works to connect. These things don't stand individually. All of it connects to one thing, and just one push forward to make some corrections to assist in the next group of Black students having a greater time on campus, faculty and staff having a greater time and an easier time as employees, you know, so that's the point of it all.
Thank you so much, Jake. And I just want to thank everyone else, like I said, and thank the attendees. We had quite a few folks register. Jake originally said only 5 people are going to show up.
Hey,
see,
I was fine.
I told you.
It was only going to be 5 people. I'm fine.
Lots and lots more. So we're very proud of you, Jake. And everybody, thank you so much and have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank everybody.